every adult member of the family. Now, there may be somebody who had 5 children, they will live 5 adult children living in the same house. That means the landowner has to now build 6 houses for them. You know, I think some of it has probably gone overboard.
Okay.
Look, let's get back. We have to create 200 million jobs over the next 2 decades, and we need to get land for industrialization. And we need to get it in a fair manner. We do not want the farmers to suffer. But I think
everybody's in agreement on that point, Mr. Nanda. May I just ask you to hold your thought for 1 second? I'm going to get Pankaj Bajaj in on this discussion. Pankaj, you know, I've just finished having a conversation with an NAC member, Mr. Saxena, and the NAC's recommendations, in a sense, were really the foundation or the bedrock of this bill as we see it today. Let's talk about the cost. And Mr. Saxena's comment to me was, look at what's happening in Greater Noida. If you didn't have a bill like this, you would be in a lose-lose situation, as is the case in Greater Noida. But with this bill, perhaps you will now be in a win-win situation. Do you see it that way?
Greater Noida cannot be taken a case in point. I mean, that's not how the majority of the real estate industry works in India. The majority of real estate development in the township format happens by private land assembly, by private developers through open market transactions. Noida and Greater Noida are unique cases where the model depends on the government acquiring the entire land first, and much of it has been done compulsorily. And I think, as one of your other panelists said, that there have been stray cases in the last 2-3 years where land has been acquired compulsorily. It has received a lot of media exposure, and that has been taken to be the general condition of farmers all over the country, which is not the case. We develop townships across India, and most of the times we find willing farmers who want to sell.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you, Pankaj. I agree with you there.
Yeah.
But let's talk about some of the salient features as far as this bill is concerned, and then give me a sense of what you actually mean by cost escalation. If we look at what the bill says, is now compensation to farmers will be at 4 times the market rate. The earlier draft actually proposed 6, so there's relief that's come in there. There is a whole bunch of stuff that you actually need to do on the R&R side. Give me a sense of the kind of cost escalation that we're talking about and the impact really as far as your sector is concerned, which is the real estate business.
See, the bill says that 80% of the land has to be first acquired by mutual consent, and where we are not talking about 3 or 4 times the market price. We are talking about 4 times the market price only in the balance 20%, which are the unacquired pockets. So it's not as if the cost is going up 4 times on the entire parcel of land. It's only on the unacquired pockets which are compulsorily being acquired. Though I must also add that we are disappointed that housing has not been added as one of the public purposes for which land can be acquired. And that's another battle for us to fight. I mean, how are we going to get contiguous land? But let's leave that out for the time being. On the parcels of land which are acquired by mutual consent, what has been done, and which is very disappointing, is that R&R provisions have been imposed on open market transactions that had never been done earlier, and some of these R&R provisions are very prohibitive. I can run you through some of them. It says that 20% of the developed land has to be given back to the landowner. Mind you, this is when he has willingly sold land at market price. We have not put a gun to his head to sell the land to us. We have to give back 20%
That is the point that Arun Nanda was making as well.
Yes, we have to give him 20% share of any open market transaction that we might do subsequently in the next 10 years. 20% of that belongs to the original landowner. 25% share in the project. There is mandatory employment which has to be given to his family. There is development to be done in his village. And what is most, if I may use the word, ridiculous, is that the threshold has been brought down from 100 acres to 50 acres. I mean, 50 acres is nothing. It's not as if we are in real estate, we are developing 1,000 acres typically. If you buy 1 or 2,000 acres, typically you would get a couple of villages which would be completely undeveloped and people would get displaced.
Hold that thought, Pankaj. Hold that thought. I know we've got a lot of comments actually coming in. In fact, the point that Pankaj was raising, this is a new proposal in the new draft that went to the cabinet, which has reduced the mandatory R&R limit to 50 acres versus 100 acres as was initially proposed in urban areas. Gentlemen, I'm going to take a quick commercial. commercial break and come back to you for final thoughts on this. Stay with us. Coming up, the Cabinet, as we've been discussing, has given its approval for the Land Acquisition Bill. Continue our coverage on the other side. Well, we are discussing the Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation and Resettlement Bill that has been given its approval by the Cabinet today. Let's go across back to our panel of experts, B. Muthuraman, Arun Nanda, as well as Pankaj Bajaj. Gentlemen, I'm afraid we're right out of time, so I'm going to ask you to keep your comments brief. Mr. Muthuraman, let me start by asking you, the process now of the Parliamentary Standing Committee reviewing this piece of legislation will start, we understand, from the 7th of September. If you were to make your representation all over again, the 3 or the 4 crucial points that you would like the government to address, sir?
You see, the first thing is that the rehabilitation and resettlement package plus the cost of land needs to be reasonable and needs to be brought down. That's number one. Number two, it has always been my understanding that in the earlier bill that was in the public domain, the government was to buy, or the predominant agency to buy the land. I believe that that should be retained, because it is really not practical for large tracts of land to be bought by private entrepreneurs. The third point I would make is that there is a public purpose that you need to define before you buy the land, and I think the bill states that you can't change it. But I believe that you should be able to change it from one public purpose to another public purpose. After all, a public purpose being defined as being good for the public in terms of employment and so on, it doesn't matter if somebody took a land for cement industry and put up a power plant or vice versa. That should make a difference. And every time going back is going to be difficult. And the fourth is, I believe that some of the complexities, there is in the provisions of the R&R, while the R&R in principle is a good one, there are lots of complexities, and I will ask them to reduce the complexities by pointing out what the complexities are in today's bill. This is
all right. On that point of public, on the point of public purpose, sir, what we understand is the bill very clearly says public purpose, once stated, cannot be changed. This is what has been approved by Cabinet. Whether or not changes are made at the level of the Parliamentary Standing Committee, we don't know. Arun Nanda, 1 minute, sir. Your areas of contention that you would like the government to address urgently.
First is that I think it should be clarified that it is only prospective, and second is that the R&R should only be for the government acquired land and not on private acquisition, which has been done on an arm's length basis. Third is this 80% is very high, because the moment people know that they'll get 4x, you're going to have people holding back their giving land on a private basis. So I think this 80% has to be brought down to somewhere near 60%. And the fourth is, as Mr. Muthuraman said, I think this whole compensation package should be a fair compensation, and we are all in favor of a fair compensation from an industry point of view, but it should not go so high that it will make the projects unviable.
All right, Pankaj Bajaj, final word from you. The 2 things that you would like them to address. You've already talked about 4 in your previous comments.
Firstly, I would like, from the point of view of housing, that it should be brought under the ambit of public purpose. I would like to request the Cabinet that the farmers are not the only constituency which needs to be addressed. There's a vast urban middle class, and there's urbanization happening at a very rapid pace. Housing needs to be provided to these people at affordable prices, and this act is going to make that very difficult. So R&R should definitely be out of the ambit of private transactions. The other small point I want to make is that the ban on blanket ban on multi-crop land being acquired, I think that should go. It's highly impractical, especially in the Gangetic Plains, where almost every land is multi-crop. I mean, how else are we going to get land?
There is consensus on that. I think there is consensus across industry as far as that point is concerned. Pankaj Bajaj, Mr. Muthuraman, Arun Nanda, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18 with your thoughts. Jairam Ramesh has kept his promise. The bill will be tabled in this session of Parliament as he had promised. On the 7th of September is when it will be tabled in Parliament. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. We've got just enough time to fill you in on what's happening with the European markets because it is a sell-off there. The European markets have crumbled. They've fallen to 29-month lows. Let's bring up Europe for you. The FTSE in London down by a little over 3%. The DAX is down 5% and the CAC is down by 4.5%. It's not looking good in Europe. The US markets are shut on account of Labor Day, but we'll pick up on the action and what's really precipitating that fall in Europe in the next 30 minutes on India Business Hour. There's a lot more to talk about, not just the land acquisition bill. We'll get you highlights of our day's news coverage in 30 minutes on India Business Hour. Thanks for watching.